They thought their German shepherd had turned on their son. They had it completely backwards. The sound of a 2-year-old hitting the hardwood floor is unmistakable. A flat, heavy slap that travels through the house. Then the silence. Then the scream. Marcus went down hard enough that the picture frames rattled on the hallway wall, and Atlas was standing over him before anyone in the family could take a step. That was the third time that week. Priya Nambiar had been a licensed physical therapist for 9 years. She had worked in pediatric neurorehabilitation. She had assessed hundreds of children. She knew what a large breed dog displaying resource-guarding behavior near a distressed toddler looked like. She believed, with the calm certainty of someone who had spent nearly a decade building clinical judgment, that she knew exactly what she was watching. She was wrong about every single part of it. Atlas was a 5-year-old German shepherd, 91 pounds, obsidian black with tan along the face and chest. He had lived with them since he was 8 weeks old. He had never, in 5 years, shown anything but patient tolerance toward every person who walked through their door. The kind of dog that people described as unnervingly calm. The kind of dog that sat outside the bathroom door when anyone went in and waited. Marcus was 22 months old. He had started walking at 14 months, running at 17, and falling constantly since then in the way that toddlers do, spectacularly, without warning, forward onto the carpet, sideways off the couch arm, straight down onto the kitchen tile. He was not a fragile child. He was loud, fast, and seemed to operate without a reliable connection between his intentions and his legs. The first time Atlas knocked him down, Priya was in the kitchen. She heard the fall before she heard the dog move. By the time she reached the living room doorway, Atlas had his front paws on the floor beside Marcus, his nose pressed to the boy's chest, inhaling in slow, deliberate pulls. Marcus was crying, one arm raised, reaching toward the dog. She crossed the room and pulled Atlas back by his collar. He went with her, sat, looked at Marcus, did not look at her. Priya told herself it was proximity anxiety. Dogs sometimes developed fixation behaviors around infants and toddlers, a response to the unpredictable movement, the high-pitched vocalizations. She told herself Atlas had been startled and responded by crowding. She noted it. She watched. The second time, Marcus was on the playroom rug reaching for a toy car that had rolled under the bookshelf. The frustration cry built fast, that particular escalating pitch that meant he had decided something was unfair. Atlas came from the hallway at a pace that was not a walk. He covered the distance between the door and the boy in 4 strides, lowered himself directly in front of Marcus, and pressed his muzzle flat against the boy's mouth. Not licking, not nudging, holding position, his nostrils moving, his eyes locked on the boy's face. Marcus went still for half a second, confused by the contact, and then screamed louder. Priya moved Atlas off him. He did not resist. He sat 6 feet away and watched. Her husband, Rohan, had seen it from the hallway. He waited until Marcus was settled before he said it. That was aggressive positioning. Priya did not disagree. She had the years. She had the framework that made the conclusion feel airtight. She called their vet, Dr. Corinna Stahl, who had handled Atlas since puppyhood. Dr. Stahl listened, asked 3 questions, and said she wanted to see Atlas that week. The third knockdown happened on a Thursday morning. Marcus was playing on the floor of the dining room, stacking the large soft blocks he'd gotten for his birthday. He built a tower to his own chest height, which took significant effort, and then it fell sideways and hit him in the face. The cry came out of him like something pressurized. Atlas was in the room before the blocks finished bouncing. He went chest down in front of Marcus, face to face, nose against the child's nose, and stayed. Marcus pushed against him with both hands, open palms on the dog's muzzle, crying into his face. Atlas did not move. Priya walked into the room from the hallway and stopped. She stood at the threshold for 4 full seconds watching, and then she moved Atlas to the laundry room and closed the door. She called Rohan at work. She used the word unsafe. He came home at noon. They reached out to Rohan's brother, who had a house 40 minutes north, a yard, no children. Temporary. Just until they understood what they were dealing with. Atlas went into the laundry room that night. He did not bark. He pressed himself against the base of the door and stayed there. Priya could hear his breathing through the gap. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. At 2:43 in the morning, Marcus made a sound through the baby monitor that Priya could not name. Not crying, something underneath crying, a low, labored sound that did not belong in the middle of a quiet night. She was out of the bed before the thought assembled. Down the hall, into his room. Marcus was in the crib, eyes open, not moving. His face had a color she associated with her clinical work, not pale, not gray, something between them. She touched his forehead, wrong temperature. She lifted him and felt the wrong weight, the too soft weight of a body that had gone somewhere it shouldn't. She was dialing 911 with one hand and screaming for Rohan with the other. The paramedics noted his oxygen saturation on arrival, 84%. Normal for a child his age is 95 to 100. His pediatrician, Dr. Farouk Ose, met them at the hospital. The workup took 4 hours. The diagnosis came back at 6 in the morning, a previously undetected cardiac arrhythmia, a structural irregularity in the electrical conduction of his heart that caused intermittent drops in oxygenation, not constant, not always visible, triggered by physical exertion, by sustained crying, by the particular physiological spike that came with a toddler's full-body frustration response. Priya sat in the chair beside his hospital bed and tried to assemble what she knew into something that made sense. Has your dog ever done something that made no sense until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. Dr. Ose spoke to them both on the second morning. He asked about symptoms they might have observed at home. Unusual stillness, after crying episodes, labored breathing, any episodes where the child seemed briefly unreachable. Priya answered his questions and then sat quietly for a moment. She said, "Our dog kept putting his face against his mouth. When he cried, Dr. Ose looked at her. Then he said something she had not been prepared to hear. Dogs can detect hypoxic breath chemistry. Changes in oxygen saturation produce measurable shifts in the volatile compounds present in exhaled air. A dog with no medical alert training whatsoever will, in some cases, begin responding to those chemical signals autonomously, through proximity alone. What you're describing, the face-to-face contact, the positioning, the refusal to leave, that's a response pattern that has been documented. He was not agitating your son, he was trying to read him. The knockdowns. Atlas had not knocked Marcus down. He had lowered himself in front of the boy at the exact moment the crying reached the physiological threshold that changed what was in his breath. Toddler at full cry weight falls forward. Dog already descending to floor level. Adult watching from a doorway sees a dog knocking a child to the ground. Every piece of clinical training Priya had told her what she was watching. Every piece of it was wrong. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If these stories matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Atlas came home on a Saturday. Priya opened the front door and he walked past her directly to Marcus's room, where the boy was asleep in his crib, wearing his new cardiac monitor, a small disc adhered to his chest, green light blinking slow and steady. Atlas put his front paws on the crib rail. He lowered his face toward the boy's face. His nostrils moved once, twice, 3 times. Then he dropped back down, turned twice, lay down on the floor beside the crib, and put his chin on his paws. Priya stood in the doorway. The next story involves a dog who alerted to something no piece of technology in that house was designed to catch. Marcus's cardiac monitor blinked green in the dark, and Atlas stayed where he had always intended to stay, on the floor below the boy he had been trying to protect since the first time the crying sounded like a warning.